its ability to make sounds and to be, lots of polyphony. It just put away all the analog synths. And on top of that, because it's digital, it never goes out of tune. It never drifts. You never have problems with it, really. The only thing that's ever gone wrong on this is, of course, I had to replace the backup battery, but that's par for the course on any machine with that CMOS memory. You have to replace the backup battery every 7 years. When I graduated from college in 1984, the DX7 had just come out, and the prices of these synthesizers basically were going through the floor. I was in Daddy's Junkie Music store around 85, and I saw a ARP Solus. And I had never heard of the ARP Solus, but I had been a big ARP fan earlier in my life, so it was $85. I just bought it. And then a Sequential Pro 1 turned up. I'd never heard of that either, but it was $79, so I bought it. And the guys at Daddy's Junkie Music are on commissions. They found a guy buying up all old analog synthesizers. They started having them delivered from all the different stores. They'd ship them to the Nashua store. They'd call me on the phone, "Hey, would you like a..." And then I would come down and buy it. And I ended up buying a lot of old synthesizers on the cheap. And I was in, where was it? It was the Danbury Electronic Music Center in Danbury, Connecticut. I had lived near Danbury for a little while. And the guy down there, Gary Schwartz, he was saying, you really ought to have this Mellotron if you're going to start a museum. And I wasn't even thinking about starting a museum, but then he suggested it, and he was joking, but I took him seriously, and I started a museum. He sold me his Mellotron. So that's how it all came about. And be very careful not to knock that container. It is in exactly the right place to catch the drips from the ceiling. As you can see from the mess on the floor, it doesn't catch all of them, but between that and the bucket, I think I've got most of it. So here we've got the Roland Jupiter 4, which is one of the early polyphonics. And then this case here with the keyboard is the case that I pulled the Electrocop 101 panel out of to reverse engineer it. And sitting in the case right now is an ARP axe that I have to finish repairing for somebody. And then over here is a Chroma expander that I'm trying to repair for somebody. Not having much luck either. What a pain in the ass these things are. Even after I built that gadget to repair all the voice cards, I've still got a problem on the main board that I can't figure out what the hell it is. Here's the Korg MS-20. Very popular little piece. And to its right there is a Whiteface ARP Odyssey. Now, this is a hand-wired prototype, the very first ever made of the ARP 2500, the one that appeared in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And if we pull out this module to examine it, you can see that it is, first of all, hand-wired. And they just, stuck all the parts in on flea clips because they really weren't sure that this was going to work. And as you can see, they added like, oh, we got to put a resistor here, we got to put a capacitor over there, we got to do this, and they made it work. And this is serial number 3 of their ring modulator. And I have, some of these modules do have their own circuit boards. Many are hand-wired, however. This is, that is a circuit board. Yeah, the filter amp is serial number 6. And the sequencer, this sequencer does not even have a serial number because they hadn't even started. Hiding underneath this is our Mellotron. And then
do you allow people to play these machines at all? Or?
I certainly do. However, the power supply on both the ARP and the Mellotron, the capacitors have gone. So I cannot let you play these particular ones. You can certainly play. Behind you is an original Mini Moog, and above that is the new Mini Moog Voyager, and those are both playable. And above that is an ARP 2600 Gray Mini. Which is also, I believe, playable, except I have another ARP 2600 set up elsewhere in the building that's the one we use for demos. And our Mini Moog Voyager, by the way, is serial number 9, photographed by Bob Moog. God bless him. Now that Audio Playground is closed in Florida, we're the only synth museum on the East Coast. And since the other one that was on the West Coast has moved north to Canada, I think we're the only synth museum in the United States right now. So we could be the U.S. Synth Museum, but right now we're the New England Synthesizer Museum. And the thing about New England, of course, is that Bob Moog built his machine in New York, which is just outside New England, and Al Pearlman built the ARPs right outside of Boston. The ARRI synthesizers out of Peabody, New England Digital Synclavier was in Vermont, and last but not least, we have the Electrocops, the EML 101 and so on, came out of Vernon, Connecticut. And last but not least, of course, Wendy Carlos was born in Rhode Island. So New England does have quite a claim on electronic music. The Voyager. Now, if I put this in, if I put it in panel mode, if you push these plus and minus buttons, you can select different patches. And then if you push enter, that patch becomes active. Off the really long release times. There's a dealer, an international dealer down in Cambridge. His name is David White. He's a friend of mine. He loves synthesizers, but alas, he's just not really into the electronics that much, and he can't really repair them himself except if it's something very simple. So I would do repairs for him, and he would pay me in synthesizers. So I got that Multivox from him. I got the Roland SH7. Did I get that from him? I forget whether I got that from him or not. He got me the Ramona. I've gotten a large number of pieces from him over the years, just for all the repairs I've done for him. I have been interviewed for background material by both Spin Magazine and U.S. News and World Report, so people know we exist. Mm-hmm. The company that sells photographs to everybody, the photo finding place, they contacted us for photographs, and so on and so forth. So gradually, I think musicians are going to discover, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to give you our trademark. I hope nobody steals this because it's really good. I can just see some corporate guy saying, well, we're worth $10 billion, so we're just going to use this, and then Dave Wilson can screw himself. The New England Synthesizer Museum, we're a resource. Use us. Trademark. And I'd like to put that up on the website, but of course it's like somebody's going to steal it. What am I going to do? Got a Vermona up there from East Germany.
The top one?
The top, very top one. I'm sorry, I don't really have shelving designed to show this stuff. You probably want to tilt the camera downwards a little bit because I think you're not getting. Yeah, there you go. That's better.
I can see some of it.
Oh, you can see. Yeah, there it is. Then below that, we've got the Roland SH7, which is one of the two most popular of the Roland SH models. And then below that is a Multivox Duo 880, which is a variation of the ARP Soloist Moog Satellite Roland SH1000, SH2000 kind of machine. And then just below that one is the sequential multi-track, which was the largest and fanciest of the track series that came out of sequential circuits. And then as you move over to the right there, you can see an OBX in the corner. And next to that, that's one of Oberheim's first polyphonic programmable machines. Then you've got this Yamaha DX1 over here, which was the original DX synthesizer after the GS series came out. And sitting on top of that, one of Bob Moog's Etherwave Theremins. I actually was going to take it with me to New York City to have Bob Moog autograph it when he was showing the Voyager with Keith Emerson. And I said, nah, I can get it to autograph it any time, and I left it here because I have to take it on the train otherwise. And of course, Bob Moog, that was the last time I saw Bob Moog alive, so it's not going to get autographed now. Let's see, we also have the original EMU emulator, which is standing on end there, and it's got the J.L. Cooper emulator generator modulator modification, which is kind of rare. We definitely need to put up more shelving.
Yeah.
Kind of expensive stuff, though. And then we've got, let's see, here's the ARP string ensemble, which is just sort of sitting here with stuff all over it. This is interesting. You've never seen one of these before because they don't exist, except I built this one by hand. This is the voice card from a Rhodes Chroma synthesizer, and they're a real pain in the ass to repair because you have to repair them while they're in the synthesizer, and you have to program the synthesizer in order to exercise them, and it's all a big pain. I take this board and I plug it here onto my adapter, and then I can work all the controls by hand and thereby repair the thing much more easily. I wanted to show this to Phil Dodds, who designed the Chroma, but we now find out that a few weeks ago Phil Dodds has passed on as well. We're really losing people quite rapidly, I'm afraid. We lost Doug Curtis, who designed the Curtis chips that are the filter and 8th VCA in that board. We lost John Simonton, who made the Paya synthesizer kits, of which this is part of a Paya 9710 VCA ring modulator ADSR module. They had actually given me I was one of the people who was given a free kit when the kits first came out so that I could help them to find errors in the manual. I was a proofreader for the assembly instructions. And as a result, the museum had a free 9700 series synth, which is, I never quite finished the VCA module because John Simonton said, wait till I send you parts. And he never did, and now of course he's gone. Paya, however, is still around, so presumably if somebody wants to build another Paya synthesizer, the modules are actually quite good. The oscillators track the ARP 2600, which I was very pleasantly surprised to see because the 2600 is the gold standard, even to this day. I've had people hand me analog synths and say, get this out of here. I don't ever want to see it again. Get it out of here. I got an Octave Cat that way. I've got a, see, what else was I given for free to get rid of? I was offered an EPS-1 by Korg, but I turned them down because it looked like it was in horrible condition. What else did I get for free? A Micro Moog I got for free. I got a number of pieces for $10 each too. I got a Chroma Polaris. I got a Krumar Bit 1. And then, of course, some of the stuff I've had to pay more for. I mean, my MS-20 there has cost me $50. But I felt like splurging that day. Unfortunately, because I did not want to mess up the pristinity of the very first model, it has the oldest software, and this software is not does not allow you to change the paddle settings while you are using a pre-stored. So if I just hit edit, we'll hit master. Down. Over here we've got the White Elephant, which is a Quartervox organ that has a built-in Moog satellite synthesizer and was sold under the Moog name, so it's got a Moog logo on it. And then we've got the other version, the earlier version of the ARP-AX.
That's the one that I had.
Yep. And then, let's see. We've got a Blackface ARP Odyssey over here. If I just hold it around, you can get the light on it. And then, what have we got? There's the ARP Solus and an ARP Quartet, sort of a small pile of ARPs that need repair. Oh, how did that get upside down? People were turning them upside down to photograph where they were made, probably. An Emu drumulator. Get out of the way I'm blocking the light. And there next to it is the ARP 16 voice piano. I was contacted originally by Modeski Martin and Wood. They were actually doing a concert up in Portsmouth, Maine. Portland, Maine. And I had to drive all the way up there to fix their Mellotron, which their roadies had dutifully dismantled down to the last piece. I discovered that the actual problem was that a wire had come loose on their electric cord, which was very easy to fix. Then I had to put the Mellotron back together in time for the concert, which I did. Boy, was that a challenge. And then I did repair the power supply on the, the Moog Source for a band called Phish, P-H-I-S-H. And no sooner did I do that and got it back to them than the band broke up. So that went well. And the only other thing, oh yeah, this is a good story, I think you'll like. I went into, what was it now, EU Wurlitzer synthesizer store. They're out of business now. They were right here in Nashua. They had a store, and I was in there. Studio Electronics SE1 synthesizer. I'm playing it, and I'm trying to play the Lucky Man solo. And I can't get it to sound right. And I'm tweaking, you know, I can change the envelope. It's got all these knobs on it. So I'm like changing knobs. I can get this now. It still doesn't sound right. Finally, I figured out what was wrong. The glide, the portamento, was linear. They did it in software, and it was linear, and it was no good. And I wrote them a letter. Dear Studio Electronics, you're doing linear glide. Do exponential glide. Here's the equation. I gave you the equation. For 2 years, I didn't hear anything. I figured they just threw my letter in the garbage. You know, people don't care what I have to say. You know, when the Johto series Pokemon came out, there was a baby Jigglypuff, and I told them you should name it Little Enough, Littlynuff. That would have been a perfect name for it. No, they ignored me. They called it Igglybuff, so it's called Igglybuff. Thanks a lot, Pokemon. Anyways, 2 years later, I get a phone call from Studio Electronics. They're like, we just tried this glide algorithm and it's fantastic. We think it's wonderful. And I said, good, donate a synthesizer. We're not for profit, it's tax deductible. And I got them to donate an ATC1, which has my glide algorithm in it. But that's not where the story ends, because I then get a phone call from a man named Will Alexander, who I'd never heard of, who told me, oh, Keith loves what you've done with the glide on this SE Studio Electronics. You know, he really loves it. And I think you should come and meet Keith. I think you should come, you know, backstage and meet Keith. And I, of course, had been backstage at Modeski Martin in Wood, and they asked me if I wanted to stay for the concert. And I'm a classical music buff, you know. I just was very polite. I'm not knocking anybody or anybody's kind of music, but it's not for me. I really didn't want to stay and sit through a lot of MMW. So I was very polite, and I have to drive back to Nashua. It's going to take me an hour and a half. I might as well leave now. So who is this Keith guy that I'm going to have to meet now? Well, it turns out it's Keith Emerson of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And I actually got a backstage pass to Emerson, Lake and Palmer because I stayed home and did algebra while everybody else was out having sex. Ow! There are basically three things that affect how a synthesizer sounds. The first is the overall architecture. The ARP string ensemble, for example, uses a divide-down circuit like an organ. Let me see if I can just slide some of this stuff over a little bit so you can sort of see the front panel here. No, not really. There's a couple of buttons and a couple of sliders you can see. Anyways, this has organ divide-down circuits, which gives it a relatively thin sound. But you have full polyphony. You could press every key on the keyboard at the same time and they would all sound. Then you've got the channel assigners, where you're given maybe 8 synthesizer circuits, and if you press 9 keys, you only hear 8 of them. So you've got that, and then of course there's the monophonic synthesizers and the duophonic synthesizers, where you get 1 note at a time, or 2 notes at a time at most. And after the architecture, the next thing is the filters, and how the filters are set up. The string ensemble doesn't really have any filters to speak of. The ARP Omni has 1 filter for the entire keyboard, so you can play all the notes, but you only get 1 filter. And then something like a Korg PS3100 has 1 filter for each key, and it's fully polyphonic with divide down. And then the third thing after the filtering is it's the way the oscillators themselves are set up, because that determines the relative fatness of the sound. Some machines have 1 oscillator, some machines have 2 oscillators but they're both digital, and so on. And finally you end up with machines that have like 3 analog oscillators for voice, like the Memory Moog, sound absolutely fantastic. I like the Oberheim 2-voice. I've actually got my 2-voice patched out. Unfortunately, it's not set up for display right now because I had it at, there was a big guitar show, Premier Guitar Festival down in Boston, and I was invited to have a booth there and show some synths. And I never unpacked the Oberheim when I got back, but it's a 2-voice, and it's all patched out so you can patch any module together. Basically, you've got a box about this big, and it's got a 2-voice keyboard, 2-voice sequencer, 4 VCOs, 2 VCFs, 4 envelopes, 2 LFOs, 2 VCAs. It's just an amazing piece. And then another piece that I really like is the Korg Monopoly, because that thing is so versatile. And you can actually play live on it and make it sound like it's Wendy Carlos multi-tracking, because all of a sudden these notes will jump in different octaves. So you can set it to polyphonic and then tune each oscillator to a different octave. And you're playing 2 or 3 notes, and then you hit an accent and it comes in and it's 2 octaves higher than it's supposed to be, just like on a Wendy Carlos recording. And it's great, and it's playing it live. DS2A digital sequencer by Oberheim. This is the sequencer featured on Larry Fast's Synergy Sequencer album. And then up here, this is a Moog filter bank, of which only 5 were made. I have 4 of them, and the other one is installed in Wendy Carlos's Moog. So it's just Wendy and me. I'm always full of plans. I never actually do anything. Well, no, really. I'm going. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to put up more shelving and put more exhibits on the shelves, less exhibits on the floor. And I understand that Building 19 is having a sale on big blue tarps. That should solve my roof problem, at least temporarily. I wonder if it's possible to get a grant to have your roof repaired if you're a museum. Because those guys want 16 grand. It's ridiculous. If I had 16 grand, I'd buy a Buchla.
Why are Buchlas all the rage these days?
Oh, Buchlas have always been all the rage. Don Buchla is the only guy who did not go out of business. He's the only guy who still makes analog synths, who always made analog synths. He is the one success story in the analog world. It's true that Bob Moog is back after a hiatus, but Don Buchla and Associates has been in business non-stop since about 1963 or thereabouts, and his machines, there's a mystique to them because they're different. What happened is Bob Moog invented the synthesizer, basically, and Don Buchla was not aware of what Moog was up to. Moog himself, Bob Moog told me, Buchla didn't know what Moog was doing. Buchla did his own thing, and his machines are different. They're still analog voltage-controlled synthesizers, except Buchla doesn't even like the word synthesizer. He likes to use the words electric music box. So his creations are electric music boxes. And they're different, and they sound different. And if you've listened to any of the things that Suzanne Ciani has done with hers, the Coca-Cola commercial where you hear the Coca-Cola bubbling, and it's not really Coca-Cola bubbling, it's really a Buchla being played with a multiple touch keyboard. And I mean, all the different things that have been done with Buchlas. I'll tell you one piece I really love is the Gannett sound. When I used to have cable, Gannett owned, I think, CNN, and they would run this thing where they show the Gannett logo rotating in 3 dimensions. This was so popular back in the day with the computer graphics, and they had this thing going with the Buchla where they just had sequencers and filter sweeps and phase shifters, and it's incredible. I love what people do with the Buchla, because the Buchla is not, it doesn't even, I mean, they don't even have musical keyboards on them. They have just like touchpads that are equally spaced, and it's up to you to decide what you want your music to sound like. Notes, what are those? It's just, do whatever you want. Free for all, Buchla. And that's what makes those machines so wonderful.